are we at this moment? Tell what farm is this?
So we're sitting at Huxham's Cross Farm, which is the Apricot Center is a tenant at Huxham's Cross Farm, which is in Dartington in Totnes.
Yeah.
And we've oriented the new buildings. This was a bare-field site when we came, so we built these buildings and we orientated them due south, which is why we're sitting here, squinting in the sun.
And what? How many hectares do you have, and what fruit or vegetables?
So we have 34 acres, which is I have to do the sum. I think that's 12 hectares. Is that right?
Approximately.
Somewhat,
and of that we have. We grow vegetables and fruit. We do a lot of agroforestry. We grow small-scale grain for local consumption, so that's wheat.
Yeah.
And we had 200 chickens, but unfortunately, because of avian flu, we're having a pause on those. We've got about a third of the farm is wetland meadows. So basically, it's for nature, for biodiversity.
Yeah. And did you buy the land, or how did you get this land?
So the land was bought by the Biodynamic Land Trust in 2015, and it was then tenanted to the Apricot Center on a 15-year tenancy that we have the option to renew. So we have 150 people who invested in shares, withdrawable shares in the farm. That means they can take their money out, but they don't get a financial dividend for the investment.
Yeah, you told something about measuring the quality of the land. How does that work? It sounds very nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
So because of the investment in the farm, we wanted to give something back to the investors. And we went through a permaculture design process to design the farm. And so we were very clear about the functions, what we wanted to achieve with the farm. And so we decided to, or we were asked to do an impact assessment on so the functions or the aims, if you like, of the farm are to be to mitigate climate change, to be resilient to climate change, support biodiversity, produce lots of food. We need to be economically viable, of course, and because there is no big box of money anywhere. And we also have a well-being service embedded in the farm. So we do work with young people and families. Do therapeutic work with people on the farm as well. And most recently, we've added an educational arm to the work as well, so we train lots of people. So those were our functions. That's what we wanted to achieve. So we thought we set out some baseline measurements and we measured those over the farm. We came back 5 years later and measured them again.
Yeah.
And then reported that to the shareholders, actually to anybody who cared to listen, really.
Yeah.
And what we found was that we are carbon negative, so that's positive. So we sequester 10 tonnes of carbon per hectare per year. We use about 50% of that, so we sequester about 5 tonnes of carbon per hectare per year over what we use. We are resilient to climate change. 2023 this year was a challenge because we had no rain for 10 weeks, followed by a lot of rain.
Massive rain.
So we've put in a huge amount of rainwater harvesting and agroforestry rows to help with that. And we grow a huge diversity of crops. Do we produce a lot of food? Yes, a huge amount of food that's supplied within a 20-mile radius.
Who do you supply to?
We sell directly to our customers. So we have a delivery, we have an online shop and a delivery. So we're a bit like a CSA, but you can kind of turn it on and off. And we buy in from all the other local producers as well. So we're not a pure CSA, but we have an online shop. We also do Totnes Market on a Friday.
Oh, that's today.
Today.
That's right. So
that's where we're going.
We're going to.
So you can go
do you have
a
a little? Are you now there on the?
Yeah.
Oh, so we can film there.
You can.
Yeah, not you, but
not
somebody.
Me, but somebody. Yeah. The lovely Maisie is there. And about 30% now goes to local restaurants. So the restaurants really love our food because it's very high quality and it's very fresh.
Yeah.
We are economically we're incredibly economically viable. So so this year we've hit the turnover of £1 million off of 12 hectares of land, which is
quite a lot.
It is quite a lot. Yes, obviously it's across therapeutic work, which is high value, education's high value. But the farm produces enough money to pay for itself.
Mm.
So we are what's called a community interest company. So we're not aiming to make a profit. So we share the surplus with the staff. So we are economically viable. The wellbeing service is absolutely thriving and works really well with a wide range of people, and we're training up to 100 people a year. So
Fantastic.
and biodiversity-wise, I forgot to mention that one. We so the worm counts when we arrived were pretty much zero. So I think the maths is they've increased by something like 400%. Bird species is up by 30%. Orchids are up from 10 in a field to 500 in a field. So I don't know what the percentage is. And then lots of other things are now turning up. Predatory birds are at the top of the food chain around here. So we've got more of them turning up. So owls and kestrels and buzzards. We have lizards now on the farm, and dung beetles, and all sorts of rare moths, horseshoe bats. So the farm is and swifts and swallows have arrived a couple of years ago. So every year we keep account of the new things that we're seeing.
Fantastic.
It should be an example for all the farms in the.
So they come and look. The
They
other
do.
farmers,
Other farmers come and have a look.
And are there a lot of like organic farms around, or are there?
There are. We're in a little hotspot here in South Devon of organic, biodynamic, permaculture, agroecological farming, regenerative farming, whatever you want to call it. So we're in an incredible hotspot around here with lots of lovely colleagues and fellow farmers and growers.
Nice. And
Which is very nice.
do you pay rent or do you have a lease fee to the Biodynamic Land Trust?
So we pay rent. We pay. We actually overpay the rent. So the rent was set quite a low rate. I think it's about £100 an acre. But considering a quarter of the farm is 100% for biodiversity, we can't actually have a yield from it. It reflects that. And then we pay a rent for the buildings, and we're paying 50% more than we need to at the moment because we want to share our. We're doing all right, so we're sharing that with the Biodynamic.
So
Land
they
Trust.
can buy more land and bring it into Land Trust.
Well,
Pay it
unfortunately,
forward.
the cost of land is so high that would
Exactly.
be
And,
quite high. But
You also told about the church. You rent also. How does a church? What's the situation?
So next door to Huxham's Cross Farm, there's another 20 acres or 25 acres, 10 hectares of church land that is called glebe lands. And because we wrote that impact assessment and published it, or it's on our website, and we offered farm walks. The church has decided to be carbon net zero by somewhere between 2030 and 35, and they were focusing on their buildings. Now, a colleague of mine wrote to the church and said, "Why didn't, based on our impact assessment, because the church is a large landowner, have you considered using your land to offset your carbon deficit in your buildings? All those beautiful ancient churches obviously are hard to heat." And so a couple of years later, their land agent turned up. The tenant was leaving the piece of land next door and said, would we be interested in taking that on? So we pay a higher rent there, and it's on a short-term tenancy. So unfortunately we can't put in the agroforestry that we've done here. And the deal is, but it's very good quality land, and we're more than happy to have it. In fact, we're delighted to have it. And so what we're doing is running a bit of a pilot for them where we give them 50% of our carbon that we generate on their land to offset their carbon emissions from their buildings. So we're doing the same impact assessments over there, and so what I'm really hoping is that might help them as a model to to
for every
to use,
other
to
church.
use,
Yeah.
to use for the I mean, just in Devon they have 2,000 acres of glebe lands, let alone church commission lands. So they
And that
they
normally that's not even farmed organically.
no,
No.
no,
Mm.
no.
So you improved the number of acres with organic farmed. Yeah.
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 Well, I would that would be my
Goal,
my aim.
wish,
Yeah, my wish. Yeah.
And do you think that if they had, well, I guess also if they see that it works, they'll be able to maybe offer long-term leases? Yeah.
Potentially,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, ideally, we'd like to plant agroforestry over there,
Yeah.
and put in some. So the piece of land over there used to flood quite regularly. Since we've been there, we've been using deep rooting green manures, and the flooding has stopped. But, which is probably not really a surprise, is it? But at some point, that particular field will come. You know, we'll be ploughing that up for arable production. So whether it floods then, I don't know. But we can put in a very simple pond, for instance, that would hold the water when it did flood, so it didn't flood onto the road. And also it would be fantastic for biodiversity, but we haven't got permission to do that yet. But hopefully,
it's
slowly,
also,
one step at a time.
Yeah. There's also building a sort of trust in the people, in the
Yes,
church,
that's
in
right.
the,
That's
in
right.
the neighborhood.
That's right. Yeah. So these things take time.
Take time.
So academically, I think we call that social. We have to build social capital.
Social capital. Yeah.
So that's what we're doing. So we had a little open day there last week where we showed people around what we were doing.
It sounds as a nice story. Do you have another question or?
Well, I was just wondering. So how long ago did the Biodynamic Land Trust start? Do you know?
I think it was 2013, something like that, and they bought a piece of land for Tablehurst Farm to add on to their farm in Sussex, and I think we were the second farm that they bought. And they particularly wanted one in this area because there's a Steiner school just down the road.
Yeah.
There used to be a hotspot for biodynamic farms, but they had for some reason stopped functioning the last kind of 10 years or so. So it's interesting that now we're here. Then there's now a whole little. There's quite a few other little biodynamic farms as well. So it's great. There's another farm they've bought. I call it our sister farm in Stroud. So it's very similar size, slightly different make.
What's that called?
It's called Oakbrook Farm.
Oh, yeah. And it's just, it might be a little bit technical, but I was just wondering about, how do you organise the governance here
of the Apricot Center? So the Apricot Center was already an organisation that my husband and I started on our tiny little farm that was only 1.5 hectares in Essex. And with the opportunity to take on a larger piece of land, we invited our colleague Bob Mayhew, who's a project manager, but also permaculturally trained, but also very good with finance and spreadsheets.
Yeah.
So my husband's a psychotherapist, I'm a grower, and with Bob in the mix, it enabled us to scale up what we've been doing to this larger scale here. And since then, my colleague Rachel has become a director as well, so she's very good on the educational side, and we've got 3 non-executive directors, I think you call that. So at the moment we are what's called a community interest company, so that's a not-for-profit.
Yeah.
And that's what we'd set it up as previous to being here. But our aim is that we're going to make the company employee owned in the next 5 years. So and take on another 20-year. That would be my aim.
At least.
Yeah.
So Gabriel, the Biodynamic Land Trust, have said they would be amenable to that. So to negotiate another 20-year tenancy, and to change the organisation structure so that it's employee owned, so that that's how fast these things are changing. Because when we took on the tenancy, the model was very much that we were the farmers, and when we finished our tenancy, that another organisation would come in and carry it on. Yes,
that doesn't seem.
It's not. So most farms are, quite often passed on to children, aren't they? So my children don't want to carry this on, but of course we've got a really fantastic, highly skilled group of young people now involved in the company. So basically, we'll
within the
them.
company they would stay.
Well, I hope so.
And
just telling them they're not allowed to leave.
And the customers and the community, are they also involved in the decision?
At the moment, no. I would say so. What we do every year is we have a community. We have an annual meeting where we invite representative members of the community in to reflect on what we've done in the previous year and to reflect on what we might do in the following year. And that triggers our annual report. So we all create reports to report to that group, and then that group helps us think about what we're going to do for the following
consultation.
year. Then that goes to the board of directors. So I appreciate it could be more. We could be more
structured, maybe.
Yes, but at the moment that's what it is. So it's an interesting. I don't know if the word dilemma is too strong, but so for these farms that are owned by a community, I think it's an interesting. It's interesting. Where do you put the line between the people who are the professionals running the farm through to the community wishes? So we listen to our community, but we have to run a business that is able to pay all of the members of staff here. So we employ about 20 people. It's really important that those people are paid and that we can pay ourselves, but also that we achieve our aims and objectives. So as the professionals, we need to really hold that. But we do listen to the community as to what they would like.
But the same we did with that car share company. We called it inspiration meetings.
Yes.
It's also once a year or 2 times a year.
Yeah.
Just listen, talk with them, tell them what we are doing. That sounds the same. So I think it's an interesting conversation. Because another organisation I've been involved in, that is where the farm is being bought by the community in essence, is where you can listen to the community, but if they ask you to do something that means that you're going to work really hard but not be able to pay your salary, then you need there has to be a line somewhere in there where where if you're going to pay rent, you need to be allowed to do what you know you can do in order to run it professionally. You see what I mean? So I think that's often confusion that comes in around community-owned farms. It's just because they're owned by the community doesn't necessarily mean the community can tell you 100% what you should be doing. That's a different model. That would be more like a community, what I would call a community garden or a community food producing project. Whereas if you're a farm with a tenancy, need to pay rent, pay the bills, then you need to run it professionally.
And if you had one model is with the community land trust is that you have one person representing the community who could then sit on the board and
that's right.
Who could maybe represent the voice of the community, but you can't have maybe all of the people from the community.
No, so
involved,
we have annual. So the shareholders, we invite them every year. We have 4 public-facing events, so we invite them to all of those. Sometimes we have. Not every year, but we have 100% just shareholder events. So we buy a nice lunch and we show people around and we explain what we're doing and we listen to them. And then once a year we have this annual advisory board, we call it, or Friends of the Apricot Center.
Are they always the shareholders or?
We have a shareholder representative. We have Gabriel from the Biodynamic Land Trust. We have somebody from the Permaculture Association. We have somebody from the neighbourhood.
Someone from around here.
That's right.
Oh, that's ideal.
So we bring them in and we have a whole day nice lunch, and then we discuss. Yeah, so what we do is we gather all of our information and say, look, this is what we've done this year. These are our kind of points of growth, or the problems that we've got, or the issues that we've got, and then we have a nice discussion around that, and they provide us with pointers from all of those different angles, and then we take that forward to a directors meeting and use that to inform our decision making for the following year.
A shortcut in the movie, because also of the length of the movie. Do you still have some important question or important things to say?
No, I was just wondering how far the influence of the biodynamic land trust would be. So, are they able to say, well, if they weren't happy with how you were doing things, would they be able to say, yeah. So if you don't reach certain goals, or if you suddenly start using Roundup or something.
Okay. So shall I speak to camera for that?
Go. We come to bed.
So you can always edit it. I'm just really interested.
So the biodynamic land trust, we've got what is a legal farm business tenancy. And we spent a lot of time at the beginning. We spent a whole year really creating a community between ourselves. So, so on one hand, we worked out through a heads of terms that then went into the farm business tenancy where the absolute lines were. So we're obliged to be, and we want to be, registered biodynamic. And clearly, if we got the Roundup out, then we would lose that status. And in our tenancy, if we used any pesticides or nitrate fertilisers, we would lose our tenancy.
Is that possible legally?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's so we've signed up to that, and I would hope anyone who came after it. I wanted to do that because what I would hate is that if somebody came after us and undid all of the work that we've done. So that's an absolute given. So there were these kind of baselines that this is what we want you to do, and then what we did is the biodynamic land trust, because we go through this design process, we did it with them. So what we did is we co-designed a farm that would work for them as well as for us. And so we are I think in English we say we're singing from the same hymn sheet. We're so I'm more than happy to represent the biodynamic land trust interests in meetings or conferences. So for instance, I'm at the agroforestry show next week. So in that presentation I will strongly put across that we're tenants of the biodynamic land trust, and that they have allowed us as a tenant farmer to put in agroforestry, whereas tenants of the church we can't. So I want to really emphasise how the tenancy agreement can affect the way in which you can do regenerative farming.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the fact that we've got a 20-year tenancy means we can do regenerative farming, and we can invest in here. And if we work together, we can achieve far more than if we work separately. So. Is that
the longest lease you can have, or can you also have 90 years?
I think you can have however many people want to give you, to be honest.
There's very specific tenancy laws in all countries.
But in this country they've started to give out very short-term tenancies. 2, 3, 5-year tenancies are the ones that they normally give out. I mean, it just really doesn't work for regenerative farming.
No, exactly. Well,
as a close, do you have some message for, let's say, the world, or for or a wish or a dream? What is your dream?
My dream. That's a great question. You could have asked me 10 minutes before. I'm going to say I've written a book called Designing Regenerative Food Systems.
Oh,
and that book, basically, I'll give you a copy, but basically in that book I've laid out. This is a simple answer. The world, I would say, is facing this horrendous crisis of climate change and food production, and biodiversity loss. And we should have been. I mean, I've been reading about this for the last 30 years. We need to tackle it really in the next 10 years. We need to start now, really, to tackle those issues. It's really not very difficult. We've got a whole toolkit of very simple farming methodologies that we can use that meet all of those challenges at the very same time. And my friend with the mathematical brain has worked out that if all the farmland in the world shifted to a regenerative model, then we could tackle climate change and biodiversity loss and feed everybody. So if I had the power to give a wish to the world, that I would say all farmers transition to regenerative methods in the next 10 years.
Okay.
All right.
I give you the power. I give you the power.
Thank you.